Bailing out is one of the last things an aviator wants to do. I don't care what the situation is. It's a hard pill to swallow when the decision has to be made to abandon your safe and warm cockpit to chance a fall at the earth. Parachutes have saved the lives of thousands of airmen from their falling aircraft. However, in the early days of powered flight, such a luxury wasn't always available. Or was it? There is a belief that during the Great War, or World War I, that pilots never carried parachutes to save them should their nimble biplanes be cut out of the sky. Now, this is supposedly all on the shoulders of high command. The thought was that parachutes would turn pilots into cowards who would jump from their powered kites at the first sign of danger. That being said, you'll be surprised to know that there is really more to it than just the words of a stuffy general. I'm Falcon, and in association with Native Oak Collaborations and Brandon F. himself, we're turning the clock back to 1918 as we delve into the truth about parachutes in World War I. This video is a collaboration where armchair historians like yours truly are coming together and busting history myths in a series called History Matters. Make sure you check out the link to the playlist in the description below for other content like this. To fully grasp the importance of the parachute, we're not looking at the 20th or even the 19th century, but the Renaissance. Some guy you've probably never heard of named Leonardo da Vinci sketched a pyramid-shaped parachute in his journal. Aside from the unconventional shape of the chute, it did have the modern hallmark of the passenger dangling beneath it via cables. Now, it's unknown if the da Vinci parachute was ever built, let alone tested. The first successful test of a parachute came in 1783, when French aeronaut Louis-Sébastien Lenormand leapt from Montpellier Observatory. Having survived the ordeal, Lenormand's use case for the parachute was for people to escape from tall burning buildings. Lenormand is the first person to actually coin the term parachute, which is a contraction of the Latin word para, which means to resist or be against, and the French word chute, which means to fall. In these terms, parachute literally means fall resist. It makes sense to me. There were a few other contenders developing chutes of their own, and I do urge you to look into them as well, because they really have some interesting ideas, stories, and designs that lie a little bit out of scope of this video. The parachute evolved over time, moving from a rigid framed arrangement to something more compact. As parachutes and airships became popular in the 19th century, non-rigid silk chutes came onto the scene. They were typically packed into metal canisters fixed to the aircraft. Fixed-wing aircraft became a reality in 1903, where space was really a premium. This led Austro-Hungarian tailor Franz Reichelt to design clothing that could deploy in a similar manner to a chute. On February 4th of 1912, the Flying Tailor, as he was called, took to the Eiffel Tower to test his parachute suit for the first time. Contrary to the expectations of the viewers, Reichelt was not going to test a dummy in the suit, but make a leap himself. This didn't end well for the Flying Tailor, for as he leapt from the tower, the parachute failed to deploy and he fell 187 feet to his demise. The event was filmed as it happened, and the clip was shown in theaters the next day during news broadcasts. Of course, I can't really show it here due to its graphic nature. On a brighter note, less than a month later in March of 1912, Albert Berry made the first successful parachute jump from a plane in Jefferson, Missouri. The parachute pack was contained in a metal canister beneath a biplane. Berry jumped from a trapeze bar in the wing, and his falling weight deployed the parachute after a 500-foot freefall. Canister-based parachutes became a sort of standard for deployment, which is still a far cry from the modern packs you see today on a flyer's chest or back. Things began to change in 1914, of course, when war were declared. The Great War, spawned by a geopolitical nightmare built up over the course of a century, started on July 28, 1914, when Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. For more information on that mess, check out the YouTube channel The Great War, which covers the entire conflict from start to finish as it happened. What we're focusing on today is the air combat that developed from the war. For the first time, aeroplanes were used by both sides, first starting off as recon assets. At first, things were pretty cordial, with pilots not paying much attention to the other side. Now, in the beginning, pilots didn't carry parachutes as they really weren't needed. Planes weren't even being shot down yet. As the war developed, pilots began shooting at one another, first with pistols, then rifles, then eventually machine guns. As the newly dubbed fighting aeroplanes became more numerous, so too did the amount of casualties. Still not carrying any parachutes, pilots in the early and mid part of World War I had few options if they were going to go down. Forcing the plane down into a crash landing was the ideal outcome, but oftentimes planes would lose their wing or burst into flames, preventing this. In such cases, when death was inevitable, pilots would sometimes jump into free fall or turn their service pistols on themselves rather than face the flames licking at them. It was really brutal shit. At the same time, observation balloon crews, often a choice target for fighting planes, were able to escape death by using canister or bag-held parachutes. As simple as these parachutes were, they were extremely effective at saving the lives of artillery observers. So why weren't these primitive parachutes used on aircraft? I've often heard that higher-ups in the Royal Flying Corps and the US Army Air Service kept parachutes out of the hands of their pilots so they'd fight harder and did not abandon their aircraft when under fire. Despite the perpetuation of this idea, RAF Vice Marshal Arthur Gold Lee, a Great War aviator himself, had examined the British War Office records and found no written documentation to support this claim. That being said, I don't doubt that such a stance was likely taken on by some Entente higher-ups. After all, these are the same kind of men who claim that machine guns were ungentlemanly despite their effectiveness. Even so, there are no records that state any particular man ordered parachutes not be issued. What I can find concrete evidence on is how impractical installing early parachutes onto aircraft would have been. Even the effective canister parachutes in use by balloon crews could easily get tangled in a falling and spinning airplane, dragging the pilot to his doom. Giving air crews backpack or chest-mounted parachutes was nigh impossible as well, as most aircraft cockpits in the 1910s were extremely small, preventing any additional cargo. Even if they made the cockpits larger, they would still end up being too large for anyone not bringing a parachute, which would just be another problem. Another issue is that most fighters of the era required space for a fuel tank which would be near the cockpit. Adding room would reduce the amount of fuel carried. The Germans did find a stopgap solution in 1918. Otto Heinecke invented a compact static line parachute to be installed in Albatros and Fokker fighters. A cable was affixed to the pilot throughout his flight, and if he had to bail out, all he would have to do is ensure the cable wasn't tangled and leap from the aircraft. The force of the pilot falling away would yank the cable and deploy the parachute. It wasn't perfect. The parachute or static line could easily get entangled in the fighter's tail or wings, but it was the first production chute option deployed en masse. The first recorded use of the Heinecke parachute came in June 1918, when Helmut Steinbrecher escaped from his stricken Falls D3. He wouldn't be the last German pilot to escape death, however, as Germany's top surviving ace, Ernst Udet, would bail out from his Fokker D7. His parachute opened less than 100 feet from the ground where he suffered a broken ankle, but he did survive. Udet would go on to claim 62 confirmed victories by the war's end. Post-war, Udet would join the Nazi Party and push for the implementation of dive bombing tactics for the Luftwaffe. For the less informed, dive bombing involves putting a light bomber into a steep dive at up to 80 degrees or more to more accurately hit a target versus level bombing. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna go out on a tangent because I want to shed some light on Udet's later career and talk shit about Nazis. The oh-so-mighty Stuka dive bomber, beloved by many of Arabu, was built around a strike profile developed by the Interwar Royal Air Force and US Army. Army Air Corps Colonel Billy Mitchell was able to demonstrate the accuracy of dive bombing by sinking multiple decommissioned warships. Later on, he used level bombers to destroy SMS Ostfriesland and decommissioned US Navy battleships. Udet was so inspired by the dive bomb concept to the point where he convinced Luftwaffe commander Hermann Göring to purchase 2 American Curtiss Hawks. It was the light Yankee fighter which he used to demonstrate the bombing techniques to Adolf Hitler. Anyway, my point is that I've had many a conversation where the misinformed claim that dive bombing was a native thing to Germany, which just is not true. After that, Udet became an alcoholic due to the stresses of Nazi life, and upon the launch of Operation Barbarossa in 1941, which he knew would end the downfall of the Reich, he took his own life. My goal of this video is to better explain the complexities of parachute use in the Great War. So often has it been said that it was merely generals sending men to their deaths in the grim hope that they would fight to the bitter end, but it truly was more than that. The parachute was a brand new technology at the time, and implementing it wasn't as simple as just strapping one on. It took experiences in war and improvements for both parachute and airplane technology to bring us to where we are today. In 1919, the first modern parachute as we know it was developed by Lloyd Smith. Smith's design was compact enough to fit into a backpack that was relatively flush with the body. Instead of a static line system pulling the parachute out from a casing, the new model was opened via a ripcord that could be activated once the pilot was a safe distance from the falling plane. Dubbed Airplane Parachute Type A, Smith's design laid the groundwork for all subsequent personal parachutes. And even today, echoes of the design are seen in almost every modern backpack parachute. Well, I think it's about time I pack this up. You know, get it? Like packing a parachute.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
If you like the video, you know the whole liking and subscribing thing, and it really does help me out. I've got a Patreon where I post high-resolution versions of the thumbnails and a few other goodies. As an amateur historian, I know I'm not always going to get everything right, and that's where your comments come in. If you think I was wrong or have any suggestions, I want to learn just as much as you do. Once again, Hellion was instrumental in the art assets I used in almost every video. A special thanks goes out to Native Oak and Brandon F. for bringing all of us historians together for this collaborative project. Make sure you check out the other videos in this playlist, there's a lot of really cool content coming out. Of course, my lovely patrons have once again helped bankroll my work. If you're interested in supporting myself or Hellion, check out our Patreon links. To cap it all off, here's to not needing a parachute. Keep that sun at your back, gang.